Welcome to the Smart Driving Cars podcast. We appreciate you taking some time with us. This edition is sponsored by the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. For more information, head to motoetf.com. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alain Kornhausere. Hi, Alain.
Hi, everyone.
And we are happy to have with us again Henry Greenidge, Fellow in Residence at the McSilver Institute for Poverty Policy and Research at NYU. Henry was formerly at GM Cruise and has held policy advising roles for New York City and the U.S. Department of Transportation. Thanks for being here, Henry.
Thank you. It's great to be here as always.
Great having you, Henry.
Henry, before we get into some of the Smart Driving Car newsletter headlines, let's remind listeners about the connections between race, Black Lives Matter, and transportation and mobility. There's a long history, we've talked about it before, and a need for change now in how autonomous technology, robo-taxis and more, are being developed and brought to market.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that, Fred. So without going into all of the history, we do know that our system in the United States, our transportation system, was really founded fundamentally with racism. And we know that we've got to get away from that. And so some of the work that we're doing at the McSilver Institute is looking at the connection between race, transportation, and poverty. And so today we see so many examples of that. You know, I look at this Gallup poll that was that took place maybe several weeks ago, and it said that 41% of Black Americans in this country have negative encounters with police. That is just part of the problem. We see this recent shooting with Jacob Blake. And I have to tell you, gentlemen, on the heels of COVID, on the heels of the killing of George Floyd, sort of another example of where we can clearly see Black Americans in this country treated unfairly. This one hurts. It hurts deeply. I was able to see the video, and I had to have a conversation with myself about whether I wanted to relive that trauma, but felt that I had that responsibility to actually watch what happened, given that I'm in the work and really trying to make a difference. Now, this was not a police stop, but it's really indicative of the problem that we have here in this country. And so for us at McSilver, what we really want to do is take a look at mobility, take a look at technology, and really find ways towards solutions. And so happy to be here and talk more about that today.
Yeah, and obviously it goes way beyond policing, et cetera, too. We're seeing militia groups and this 17-year-old with the shootings in Kenosha and in the aftermath. A lot of things going on that are almost hard to get your head around.
Yeah, I have to tell you, again, it is something that, I needed a mental break just because of what we're seeing. And listen, the Black community literally lost our superhero the other night, passing of Chadwick Boseman. And if you look at his career, he played all of our heroes, Jackie Robinson, Thurgood Marshall, and then, of course, the first Marvel superhero, the Black Panther. And so this on top of what we feel, we do feel a tremendous amount of loss and a tremendous amount of pressure and a tremendous amount of there's a tiredness that you feel. And so we've got to do a better job. And so I'm happy to be here talking about smart driving cars, because I fundamentally believe that this is a pathway to some of that fairness, some of that equality, where we address these equity issues.
Yeah, and I think it's really important in terms of mobility and the interaction of police and mobility. I mean, it's ironic to me that here we have mobility driving is probably the way not only many Black Americans, but also white Americans have interfaced with police. I mean, What interface have I had with police? I used to get a few tickets, when did I start disliking police? When they were behind the billboard waiting to catch me speeding, And in some sense, it's really ironic that I get a negative view of police because of my interaction with mobility. And it's just a shame. Here we have this supposed privilege of driving that, of course, the way it's sold to us, and I'll blame it on the way it's sold to us, is sold to us as now this great freedom to misbehave, to go fast, to do donuts on my neighbor's lawn, to speed through the desert. This is a closed course. Don't do it, as Mercedes has 10 whatever red things blowing up smoke, or cars riding up the Great Wall. And look at how great our car is because it can negotiate the Great Wall and all this. And so we get in there, and guess what we do? I don't know, I'll blame it on them. And then we get interfaced with police. And luckily, you know, nothing bad has happened to me, but all of a sudden, then you put this other overlay on top of it, then it just gets out of control. Yeah. And in a sense, to me, that's where maybe the opportunity of this technology is the greatest, is for it to be on these vehicles and it not letting us misbehave in the first place. So we don't need the police there to tell us, to force us to behave. And that can maybe begin to help all of this. Henry, some thoughts?
Yeah, some thoughts of this. It's interesting. You mentioned your lack of interactions with the police. I can remember being 18 years old. Maybe I was 17, and I was driving for one of the first times. I was in Morristown, New Jersey, actually, and I was pulled over. And, you know, I'm fumbling for my license, and I was absolutely nervous. And I'm not sure where that fear came from, but I can tell you it's been there a long time. Now, that was my first experience with the police. And the police officer said to me, well, why are you so nervous? And, you know, I don't remember what my response was, but that could have gone, you know,
that could have gone
very
ugly.
Different.
That could have gone ugly, and it shouldn't have occurred in the first place, right? When you think about it, in some sense, if you're, one, you shouldn't be speeding. Two, we can put technology in the darn vehicle that keeps us from speeding.
Yeah.
Whoa, what about our freedom? Get out of here. Cut it out. You know, we'll give you 9 miles or something if you want it. But this other craziness stuff, go ahead.
Yeah, it's important to point out, I did not get a ticket. I did not get a warning. I didn't get anything. I was a black guy driving around in Morristown, New Jersey, where my aunt happened to live. But, you know, we talk about, you know, what self-driving cars can do. And there's the question of, is it going to eliminate the police stops? I don't know. I don't have an answer there, but I can tell you, I wish that more companies were sort of out there exploring this issue. We know Waymo's put out their law enforcement engagement plan. I want to see more about that. What is this going to look like? And of course, how are we going to address algorithmic bias? Is that going to play a part in police interaction moving forward? There are so many questions on this issue, but I am optimistic we can get things to a place that are much better than they are.
Right. And I think, and also, I mean, why do we have people with guns like overseeing this a traffic thing or a broken taillight? Really? You need somebody with a gun? And in some sense, those folks with guns are really highly trained, very competent individuals, but they shouldn't be put into places where, you know, this triviality of I have a broken tail light, cut it out. I mean, they deserve to be places where they can be really helpful as opposed to that. And you know, I don't know, just seems to be that we should be there because all of a sudden, all this stuff then starts cascading. And, you know, I've talked about this and maybe talked about it even with you, even here with the Princeton police, you know, what they do, they're driving down the road, they see a broken taillight, they check the license plate, the owner has a warrant out for his or her arrest because, why? Because they didn't pay the previous taillight broken thing. Yeah. And all of a sudden they're getting arrested and and, you know, this just, how do you get out of that kind of thing? And it's, and why? I mean, for trivial amounts of money. Two, my goodness, there should be a fund out there to fix the damn tail lights, you know? I mean, how much could that be? Take it down to Pep Boys and have them fix the damn thing.
Yeah, but, you know, Alan, you're talking about taillights, and yes, we do see some of that. The experience that I shared, I can tell you, I was not speeding. I was driving in a neighborhood that I probably, you know, they probably didn't see a lot of people like me. in that neighborhood. And, that's why I believe I was pulled over.
Well, that's just ugly. That's just ugly. That of course there's not an excuse in the world for that one. I mean, at least the taillight, you might have a little bit of an excuse. Geez,
but
I mean,
it may be ugly, Alan, but I think, and Henry will corroborate, it's probably everyday experience.
It is an
for
everyday
young black
experience.
males, especially.
That was just the first. Now listen, I've had several negative experiences. I will say I had a positive experience. My wife and I were traveling with our young child, and we pulled over so that she could nurse, and a police officer came by to check on us. But I got to tell you, I was pretty nervous. Okay.
I don't blame you. Yeah, no, and a lot of and of course they do that, and they'll do that, and they'll turn. So there's so many instances of positive. The problem is that we, as I guess humans, tend to remember the negative stuff much more than we remember the positive stuff. Sorry, that's just the way I think we're wired. And boy, that negative stuff just keeps reverberating, and it's just ugly.
I think here, we have to figure out how to address the behavior of these police officers. They are there to protect us, and they should not be afraid of us. I got to tell you this also, the laws have never really been on our side. And I'm talking about the side of Black Americans. Police officers have qualified immunity. They often feel as though they can go out there with effectually a license to kill. And what I saw in this latest shooting, there were 7 shots fired. You hit the guy 4 times in the back. It's almost as if you were dealing with someone who was not human, when in fact he was. He was a father and he was human. But it was almost as if there was no thought of the consequences of those actions, either his life or the life of the officer, meaning that there was no thought about, any kind of discipline. And so we've got to get rid of qualified immunity. We've got to do better at training our police officers to not be afraid and to figure out how to handle those situations a lot better. Now, listen, some will say that, this gentleman had a warrant. Well, I say, the police officer didn't know that at the time. Some will say, well, that there was a knife in the vehicle. It was on the floorboard. Well, the knife wasn't anywhere near being a threat to the officer. He wasn't in imminent danger. And so you have situations like this that happen every day. What would we do if we did not have the cell phone and these videos that were able to capture what actually happens? This was a police department that is scheduled to get cameras, but doesn't have body cameras yet, right? So we've got to get to the heart of it. We've got to fix the laws, and we've got to fix the behavior.
Yeah, well, certainly the cameras are helping the situation, because in fact it just provides, in some sense, the fundamental proof of what the heck was there, as opposed to somebody's memories or somebody putting something or whatever recollection and so on. I mean, it's a good thing they're out there in some sense. Thank you, Apple, for the iPhone and everybody picking them up. They're taking a bunch of weird pictures with these things. They're taking a bunch of these. Here, I always thought that all the cell phone videos would finally show us aliens coming from the outer planets, and instead of me saying, "Hey, I saw an alien last night," Bill, here it is, Of all these things, we have yet to see an alien, seen a lot of other things that we wish we wouldn't have seen, and so on, and we wish that we wouldn't have happened. But the aliens and the Loch Ness Monster, somehow, where are they? They haven't.
I think if you look hard enough online, you'll find those alien videos.
Oh, the federal government has released footage of the Air Force and the Navy pilots, and who knows what they experienced. There are videos, Alan, for you.
Yeah, I know. Luckily, I don't go searching for those things, because, as we know, we can find anything we want on the internet. I mean, it's just no thank you.
So my question, is what can we do? What can this self-driving car industry do? You've got Waymo who took the first step. They're out there. I don't know how much work has been done since, but this has got to be something that these companies are looking at, especially the robo-taxi companies.
Right, and Henry, you've helped us out a little bit so far in Trenton, and want more help with you. I mean, I've sort of, at least from my own point of view, see Trenton as the key place to try to do this. It's a smaller community. It's not a big city. It's, the streets are not streets that are really tough. People don't travel fast. There are no, it's not a thing that you've got to go to do 90 miles an hour to provide somebody mobility, and to really go in there and figure out and really do what does the technology have to be so that it is really appreciated and serves the community. And so the community has to come in and tell the Waymos, the Uber automateds, or the GM Cruises or whatever, this is what would be good for us. This is what we would cherish and help protect and embrace. And then go out and do that. And I guess, my feeling is that's all one needs to do, because you have an opportunity to do this at such affordable price, because it can scale. And once it scales, the price is going to plummet, or not the price, the cost of doing this plummets. And if the cost plummets, that you can price it at a point that is affordable and make money because of scale. Okay, you don't have to make a lot on one. You can make a little bit on a lot, and that should keep everybody happy. No, I mean,
well, that's the question. Can we keep everybody happy? So what you just touched on is the point that that we've had this conversation before, and I always talk about the importance of the community engagement piece. And so I'm about to make some of the engineers not happy when I say this, but it's no longer just about how good your technology is. It's also about how you communicate your public policy and how you engage with the community. And in order to effectively address some of the systemic issues in Trenton, you've got to go out there. You have to have some very honest conversations with the residents of Trenton. You need to have folks who understand the culture and some of the issues on the inside, so that they can figure out ways to authentically message what we are trying to achieve with this technology, and why it's affordable and why they should trust it. And then if we're coming back to the law enforcement and police interaction thing, that's a whole nother set of issues, because again, you've got Black Americans who, many of them feel that the police are after them, no matter if they've done something wrong or not. And so how do you get this service to sort of address some of those issues and to build that trust? The answer is it takes time, and it takes people that are reflective of that community on the inside participating in the process. And we don't really see that, not in a way that's going to be effective just yet.
Well, I agree with you 100%. That, the technology, as far as I'm concerned, is essentially there. It's essentially safe enough. It's essentially good enough. The issue is how do you take that and make it relevant and make it safe and make it appreciated by the community, because it's the community that's going to consume it. It is for them. It's not for the designers. Oh yeah, hey, yeah, we got the thing to work and go around, make a left turn, right turn, stop, and great. But what about, what is it actually delivering to the customer? And the community is the customer, and it has to become not customer focused on that end. And where does law enforcement fit in? To make it a pleasant atmosphere, not to sit there and guard it with guns and make sure shoo away or anything like that. How do you make it so that everybody's happy going there? Maybe, I don't know, get a cup of coffee. I don't know, maybe hit a joint. It's the community that should be saying, this is what we want. This is how we would like to live. This is what makes us happy. And we should say, great, what are we going? Oh, well, I wouldn't do that. I mean, what the hell? What made me God on that sense? I mean, come on.
Right now, I think most people in the communities have no idea what this offers, what the experience would be like. So that's the communication part of it that I think both of you were
Yeah.
talking about.
I think the messaging hasn't been clear. When we talk about some of the benefits, right, we understand that there are long-term sustainability benefits. Well, what does that mean? Oh, reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Oh, well, what does that mean? What it means is cleaner air, which prevents a lot of these systemic issues you have in our public healthcare system today. The asthma, all of the things that we know to be true. A lot of these conversations aren't being had with regular everyday people. I think a lot of us, and I know in the past I've been guilty of this as well. I'd go out to the public and I'd be using all the words that I learned in school, and I want to sound intelligent. And people don't know what you're talking about, not because they're not intelligent, but because they're not in the space and using that vernacular. And so we've got to take a step back. We've got to have a real conversation like we're having a cup of coffee or beer with someone. And there's a reluctance to do that. I think part of it is inherently when you go to these communities, there's this notion of sort of talking down to them, saying you've got the solution for them and they just don't know. And it's got to be the reverse.
It has to be the reverse.
It's got to be the reverse.
It has to be
the reverse.
Gotta
listen. And we haven't learned that just yet. And I'm really hoping that a lot of the public policy professionals, a lot of the public engagement professionals will take that next step to figure out how to tailor those messages to everyday people.
Yep.
Terrific. Well, we're going to talk about some of the headlines in the upcoming newsletter. Uber this week vowed to make more safety information public regarding its self-driving cars after the National Transportation Safety Board had some harsh criticism. That was related to the 2018 death of pedestrian Alain in Arizona. Alain, you're saying this is really welcome news.
Oh, it's really welcome news, and I think hats off to Nat Busey, who went from NHTSA over to Uber as head of their safety programs. And I think that in the year or so that he's been there, he's really made a fundamental change in Uber, especially dealing with the safety associated with these vehicles and how they're approaching the community. And I find this a very, very welcome and very wonderful piece of news out there.
And we've talked before, Henry, I think Uber and Lyft have made a big difference already in providing transportation in underserved areas of the cities.
Absolutely. I think Uber and Lyft have fundamentally changed the way we can commute around these communities. And however, I do want to sort of bring light to an issue that I see sort of popping up. You've got Uber putting out ads in support of the Black community. You've got one of them that says something to the effect that if you tolerate racism, delete Uber. On one hand, it's fantastic. We've got public support from a company like Uber who is denouncing racism. On the other hand, the question then arises, okay, well, what are you doing internally to sort of back up those statements? And I'm not picking on Uber. I think they're very much a leader in this space and being out there. But what also needs to happen is internally, they need to ensure that their words are reflecting what's happening in the company and their culture. Are you really working to diversify your leadership? And your workforce? Is that reflective in your public policy and the way you're treating these drivers who, listen, California says they're employees, right? So that is a interesting thing that I'm seeing now with a lot of these companies. They're putting forward support and it's great marketing and advertising, but I want to understand what is the policy behind it and what steps are being taken to actually address systematic racism internally.
Yeah, well, I mean, not to argue the Uber case very, very much, but I think that in terms of what the driverless initiative can do for Uber, can really help them, is that it can let them have their drivers and almost be employees to serve mobility for those who can afford the driver and have the drivers earn a good living wage and have a good occupation. And not put any of them out of work. Where the driverless piece comes in is it allows them to scale, so they then can provide mobility to anybody, including the Black community, if not particularly the Black community, and provide it very, very affordably. Why? Because you don't have the burden of having the driver earn a living wage and not be a slave in doing it. Your slave is NVIDIA chips or something like that, you know? And I guess we've said to hell, I mean, we're gonna make those suckers do all our work for us. Great. And then you can deliver the mobility to the community who can most benefit from it and deliver it affordably so that they're happy with it. And Uber can be happy as hell making whatever money, having their stock prices go to wherever and so on and so forth. And that's how I see it evolving. And what I really like about what Nat is done at Uber is that, you know, he's really the safety piece is, you know, they have the opportunity to go out there and lead that. Now, hopefully their technology is good enough to go, you know, leapfrog GM and Cruise and Waymo and whatever and go out there. But this allows them to really scale. You know, there are only so many people you can get as drivers, maybe enough to do 1% of the trips. You can't get them to do that for 10% of the trips. Unless I mean, there's nobody willing to work that many
Right.
people willing to work that cheaply to provide affordability to 10% of the trips. The only way you can get there is through technology. And who gets laid off in many of those situations? It's me, who's been driving myself for free. You know, of course I drive myself for free.
So here's where I got to stop you out. Here's where I got to stop you.
Go ahead, stop me, please.
And I was with you.
Yeah.
I was with you. So
Yeah.
in order for companies like Uber and Lyft to achieve profitability long term, they've got to go driverless. We know that.
Right.
We know it's the key to everything because labor is their biggest cost. However, in doing so, right, and getting to that point, the question is, how are they going to communicate that effectively? You know, the issue with Black Americans and self-driving cars is this notion that the technology is going to take away jobs. If you look at who's driving these Ubers, it is Black and brown people. And so now how are you going to communicate to them that you're going driverless because it benefits everyone to do so? That is the conversation that is probably not happening right now. If it is, I'm not aware of it. But that's the conversation that needs to happen, why that's important. And it can't be just that you just want to be profitable. You know, Black Americans have been tossed aside and discarded so many times. Now, is Uber and Lyft just another technology that will do the same to this group of people? That is the fundamental question that many are asking. But they fail to sort of realize the things that you're talking about. That's a conversation that needs to happen.
Yeah, and I guess I don't present it correctly, or I continue to believe that not one Uber driver gets unemployed by this, by the driverless, because you're always going to have a mix. Some people will always want and be able to afford a driver. And in fact, what Uber and Lyft have done is they've made that affordability number come down, because before you had to pay for a taxi and it was hard and whatever, and now it's easy and so on. And so there'll still be calls for a driver. They'll still be there. But the new trips, all the other stuff, all the other need to get my hair done, need to go to church, need to go to a playground, need to go to work by the people who couldn't afford a chauffeur or even a cheap Uber driver, can now get that through driverless. And they've been introduced to that kind of mobility because of what Uber and Lyft have done to this point, and in some sense oppressing the driver and getting some people out there to work at much lower wages than what they should have been asked to work at. And so I think we've gotten a taste, I think the community has gotten a taste of that mobility, and that's great. Now, if they can even provide more of that at a more affordable price with the driverless, and let the drivers, serve the rich folks in Princeton. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the way I know how to say that, how to do that correctly, is where need help from you, need help from the community, need help from everybody to say, is this really something good that can happen here?
And of course, Henry's point about the hiring in the corporate offices at Uber and other places as well, obviously, is really valid.
But Uber corporate offices have changed drastically. Luckily, I mean, what the heck was the company like before? I mean, it was, swashbuckling. We're going out there, lawyer up. We're taking. I mean, I think the lawyer up stuff is. I think it's done. And I think it's much more looking to the community, and I think that's they need to be praised for that. And look, they've done, I think, wonders for the community, and all the data that I've seen that's been released of individual trips, of where they are, the kind of trips they make. In talking to drivers and the kind of people that they carry and so on, and they serve, I think they've done more for mobility in the poorer communies than normal transit systems have done. I think. I mean, that's my perception on the thing.
Certainly had an impact. What I think is, though, they can't stop. There's still much work to be done.
Absolutely.
There's still much work to be done. You can't sort of stop and sort of enjoy the fruits of the previous labor. You've got to continue, because it's too important not to.
Right.
Another headline to hit on here: Voyage, which has been providing autonomous shuttle transportation in retirement communities in Florida and California, has announced the G3, its next generation robotaxi. CEO Oliver Cameron, who we hope is going to be with us fairly soon, says it's half the cost of the G2, designed to drive without the need for anyone behind the wheel, without requiring a safety driver, and is ready to thrive in a COVID-19 world. They're testing UVC lighting sterilization in these vehicles. And the G3 is being tested on the road in San Jose, with production vehicles arriving next year. It sounds pretty significant.
Yeah. I think, they've been moving along, and they've focused on the senior community, which is a good community to focus on. And, they're maybe not as well funded as some of the others, but Cameron has been making excellent progress. Hopefully this does get to a point in which you can do much of this without a safety driver or without an attendant. Again, not to unemploy folks, it's the scale. You can't scale if you're going to require more labor than is currently being used. I mean, I just don't see where you find the people. And in some sense, some of this is not things that people should be doing. I think, there are better things that people can do, and that opens up a whole other issue as to, what is appropriate employment. I mean, looking at some of these apps that go out and do shopping for you and so on, and the way that the people who do the shopping for you are monitored and managed, makes me say, oh my goodness, is this really the way we control labor and get maximum productivity? And is really maximum productivity really worth it when you have to, sit there and count the seconds that it takes somebody to take an item off the shelf and find one in the store for you when they're doing something for you? I mean, talk about, never mind, I don't even want to go there, but that's
Yeah, and very often the shoppers who are at home, the people who are buying, they don't want that person rushing. They want that person who's filling the supermarket cart to be a little careful about what they're buying.
There must be a better. I mean, it got me wondering about what the heck I'm teaching in operations research and financial engineering, and all the optimization and optimal productivity and all the monitoring and all this stuff when it comes down to basically sitting there and trying to control people as if they're computers. I mean, come on, these are people. And there's got to be a measure of quality in there and compassion in addition to the number of Fitbit seconds between that somebody does that rushes out. Oh my goodness, it's whoa, really? That's the way you want to make money? I mean,
interesting comment, Alan. Very interesting perspective.
Maybe Henry has a comment on that one.
It's getting harder and harder to be sort of a gig worker in general. But I think, with COVID, these grocery apps who have their shoppers shopping for you, for the consumers, listen, it's a hard life. I think before COVID, they were sort of in their stride, and I'm talking about the shoppers, that is. But, I'm not sure people understand what it's like doing that kind of work these days. You literally have to be in front of your phone all day, and you have to get the right job. And it's less money now. They've hired more people because of the increase in demand. But as a shopper now, it's a lot more difficult to get those jobs that actually pay. You spend all day on your phone. The work that you put in pre-COVID to establish a rating, that was thrown out for some time. And so the way it works is the higher rating you have, the better jobs you get. And so they pushed that to a side for a while. I think that's now back. But in any case, this is a very sort of nascent industry still. And I think we're still understanding the impact on people who actually do this work, the gig workers. It's not an easy life at all.
It absolutely, and and make sure that they don't work more than 30 hours a week, so that they don't have to give them health care.
California is a settlement, and they've got to distribute something like $700,000 to these workers for health care. But now they're asking for hazard pay and things like that. It's a tough life.
It's a tough life to earn minimum wage out of this, and to be there. I mean, if you look at it.
Listen,
were slaves treated that badly? I mean, sorry to have that thought in my mind, Henry, but that thought crosses my mind. I mean,
a whole lot worse, I think, Alan.
But I guess so. But damn it seems like this damn app is sitting there, and you gotta sit there and toe the line. You gotta toe the line. You don't toe the line, you get whacked. Yeah. Holy hell. I don't know. I am so fortunate where I happen to be. I told Elizabeth, man, I am such a happy camper where I am because to feed my family, I have to do that. Oh my, I mean, what the hell? Come on.
Like I said, before COVID, I think this was very lucrative for many. But it's gotten more and more difficult, and the company hasn't helped with that. So for instance, one of the companies, I think Washington, D.C. is suing them because for a time they replaced the ability to tip with a service fee that went directly back to the company. So customers are thinking that if they accept this service fee, that it's going directly to the gig worker or the shopper, when that was not the case. It was going directly back to the company. And so it goes back to my point. It's no longer about how great your technology is. Your technology has to be good, but it's where you are from a public policy perspective, how you treat your workers and how you treat the general public at large. And I think that's going to become more and more important for these companies.
We'll continue in just a moment, but this is a good time to remind you about our sponsor, the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. To get more information, head to motoetf.com. And on the website, we should point out it's a good idea to read the white paper there that's titled The Smart Transportation Revolution. It's under the Insights and News tab. Great information there to help you make informed decisions about investing. You may know ETFs can be a good way to spread risk with investments and focus on a particular category of stocks. The site again is motoetf.com. Alain, Ford, Bosch, and Bedrock this week announced an automated valet parking garage in Detroit. In the newsletter, you're pretty outspoken on this one. There's a political
Next.
comment.
I mean, come on. Really? This is what we're developing this technology for, to park a car? I mean, come on. Never mind.
From IEEE Spectrum comes a posting from GM's Cruise, a company that Henry's very familiar with. It's headlined, "Self-Driving Cars Learn to Read the Body Language of People on the Street." They've hired game developers to work on this, training the vehicle systems to understand gestures. Interesting.
Well, of course. I mean, they have to understand gestures, but some of this you have to really ask a question. You know, one of the key examples is that they show somebody in a work zone holding up a stop sign with their hand up. Okay. The reason why the stop sign doesn't work is because we as humans don't react to stop signs. We want to see a hand. Guess what? Any algorithm is going to see that stop sign. It's going to stop. It doesn't need the hand out there too. Okay. So in fact, the gesture is really for us, not the automated system. And so why the automated system should even look for the hand out there, it's great. It's going to get a PhD dissertation on the shelf. But anyway, I just think some of these things, yes, there are some situations. In fact, yes, you do want to have the ability to have what the intention of a pedestrian is going to be, and the body language of a pedestrian out there, and what that pedestrian is about to do. The more anticipation you can do with that one, yes. Okay, so there is some possible really good work here, but some of this is, you know, come on, man. I don't know. Who makes up this stuff?
I'm a little bit more optimistic and positive about this than Alain is. Look, you know, we say that we're like 90% there in terms of resolving this engineering challenge, and the last 10% is, you know, solving for human behavior. So I love to hear that they're taking this on and working on this.
Yeah.
And this is what they should be doing. And I want other companies to talk about what they're doing as well. Why? Because it leads to a great amount of public trust. And that's what we're going to need to see this technology really work.
Yeah, I agree with that too. So, but yeah.
In Fairfax, Virginia, Transdev is testing a 12-person passenger shuttle for public transit. It has accessibility features such as audible and visual alerts and braille instructions, and will also have a safety steward on board, which I guess only makes sense for now, at least. Our listeners can't hear you yawning.
I know. Yeah, I guess the listeners can't hear. I'm yawning. We're more than halfway through 2020. This is a headline, and it's going to have an attendant on board, and probably, you know, they won't get it to a point that they can pull the attendant out. So after the money dries up, it's going to disappear. That's all the farther we are. I don't know. You know, it's nice to see some of these things. We've got to get started. I'm not sure. Darn it. I don't know what happened to us.
You want to move it further along faster, and
well,
there's not much advantage if you have a safety driver in there over existing systems where shuttles have a driver then, right?
That's what I mean, if you can't make it affordable, then what do we have to do? Be out there with our hands out? Do you know how much money the New York MTA is asking Washington for just to run the subway? Okay. I mean, an enormous amount of money. And we're now going to put another system out there for which we have another handout that we need another handout from Washington. I guess we just print it, the hell with it. But darn it, we've got to get, the real value of this thing is the potential for affordability, the potential to take a technology that has Moore's law associated with it. Why is Moore's law so fundamentally important? Is because when it scales, and as it scales, it gets better and cheaper. Okay, that's I don't know, why are we at least not completely in chaos right now is because we've had some amount of technology out there who's come in and allowed us to do these Zoom sessions, is allowing colleges and grade schools to open this fall, is allowing this technology to go. That has kept the market up, so it keeps all the whatever, happy. And I guess has also helped the logistics systems make sure that there's some amount of food on the shelves. And we've been able to get through this, but it's technology that's done it for us. And it's allowed a lot of people to basically become unemployed and still maybe get some money. Why? Because this thing is apparently generating the cash that is keeping the whole darn thing afloat. Well, that's great. If we only need 2% of the people to produce all the food for everybody to eat, then my goodness, maybe, many of us really can stay home and be fed. And there's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, the society should even move to that and let the people do something that they're happy doing, as opposed to, I got to sit there and watch my app and do maybe we take care of people because the technology allows us to take care of people. But let's get to the point of taking care of people. A long time ago, we took people out of the grade crossing at railroad tracks. There used to be, I guess, two guys there putting up and down the thing, and they had lifetime work, and they just put up and down. We decide, or taking tolls on the New Jersey Turnpike. I guess that's a good job. But my goodness, if we put technology in there, collect the tolls and say to those people, hey, go do something creative. We'll give you the money for it. We're collecting the money anyway. Technology is creating it, shift it over to them. Let them do something they like. We may have the opportunity to do that, but it really requires that technology. And I think the technology is to say, look, if we look at a human, let's figure out what each human in wherever that human is, what they would like to do. And let's get in the position to let them do that. I don't know, maybe that's too weird or something, or hey, or maybe, I've been sitting here in Princeton too damn long. This is the beginning of my 49th year here. So, and the professor, I talk about being in a bubble too long and having no perception of what the hell's going on in the real world. That's me.
How you cram 49 years of teaching into 39 years of existing
of life.
on the planet?
No,
I don't
38,
know.
38. My last birthday was my 38th. I went up to 39. Now I'm going down, I mean, what the hell? That's because I'm living on borrowed time, as we all know. So, I'm living on house money.
Some Tesla headlines to talk about quickly, Alan. Tesla driver on autopilot in North Carolina admitted to watching a movie on his phone, crashed his Model S into a police car that was stopped on the roadway. No one was hurt here, but you had some comments on this.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, we all know the automated emergency braking system has to work with stationary objects in the lane ahead when they appear. Okay. All right. Apparently, Daimler has a system that works. At least they demonstrated. So if you have the money to go out and buy a 2020 S-Class, you can get it on there, so that if you're following somebody and that somebody moves out of changes lane because there's a Kornhauser standing there ready to stop you, that the car following all of a sudden now sees a stationary object and doesn't say, oh, that's a tree I can pass under, or that's a overpass I can pass under. Let me just forget about it. And now begins to stop. That's what they have to do. So that's probably what happened in this case. It happens all the time. You're following somebody, you're nicely following with your intelligent cruise control, and all of a sudden they move out of the way. Now you're not following anybody, but there's, whoa. And I can't disregard that. It's what happened to Uber with Alain Herzberg. It's what happened to Tesla with Joshua Brown. Happening again, fix the damn thing. or recall, or have NHTSA go in there and recall all the damn vehicles. That'll get Elon to fix it.
Another Tesla headline, the 5-for-1 stock split that takes effect tomorrow, I think. The share price climbed well over $2,000 in the interim. Tesla passing the market value of Walmart.
Yeah, what are you going to do? I'm so glad I didn't short them at 400, 300, 200. I'm so glad. I'm so happy. I'm so depressed I didn't buy them at 1,400. Never mind. I'm the worst investor in the world. So,
and Elon Musk is saying,
yeah, go ahead.
Musk is saying it may not be long before you can control or summon the Tesla just with your mind. He demonstrated the progress Neuralink is making at the end of this past week. It's a device implanted into the skull, electrodes going into the brain. He says it has the potential to cure blindness, paralysis, memory issues, almost anything else you can think of, it seems, and possibly lead to brain-to-brain communications, not to mention brain-to-Tesla communication. They've got a demo online. They showed this working in pigs, and Musk says the goal is to help of doing all this was to recruit more smart people to come and work for the company. So he did this whole thing live online, and the videos online, and
hey, look, when you're hot, you're hot. You know, I mean, out there, Elon is, he's got his soapbox and he's got the snake oil, and man, the guy is like going nuts. And
he's got more rockets going up today too, I think.
Today, yeah. Today's another launch. Oh my goodness.
Two or three launches today, I think, actually.
Oh, I mean, you know, the guy, what are you going to do? I mean, he's almost, you know, Paul Allen, you know, before he passed it seemed like everything that Paul Allen would get into with, you know, he tried to give money away and he'd put it into something that was crazy, and all of a sudden go, should be great. And more money would come in. He couldn't give his money away. You know, I guess, I don't know, when you're hot, and when you're not, like me, no, hey, look, I have nothing to complain about. Look, I get to be on with Henry and with Fred. I mean, I have a great time.
Henry, I don't know if you saw this. I mean, they have a robot that does the surgery, that drills the hole into the skull so it's done precisely and implants the wires, that they don't allow the human surgeon to touch this.
Listen, I did see it, and listen, the guy, say what you want, but amazing figure in our industry. I do wonder what's going to happen Battery Day, you know, September 22nd.
Yeah.
Got Battery Day. They're saying there may be some impacts to the stock or not. Some think that the stock is going to continue to go up without popping yet. Others think Battery Day is really going to be the telling sign. Who knows? I'm glad I didn't short as well.
That's later in September.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, for a long time, the issue of batteries is really, to me, the critical issue here. You know, Thomas Davenport, who was an engineer in the 1830s and so on, was, at least to my investigation, was sort of the first guy out there that really looking at batteries for mobility. And of course, I used to say in my lectures that we hadn't made much progress over what Thomas Davenport was doing in the 1830s till today. Although, you know, some of the things that have been going on with the lithium, so on, is certainly an improvement. And batteries have always been really tough. You know, it was the problem of Apollo 13. It was a major challenge in the whole Apollo program, where batteries, to get the power density to a point and the rechargeability to a cycle type that in fact, you know, can be productive, has been really tough. It may be that we're beginning to see the little bit of Moore's law in that sucker. We get Moore's law in batteries, it's over. I mean, you know, everything. I mean, what's the big challenge in this guy? The big challenge in this guy is the battery. Okay. That's
And
the big challenge.
that can probably wirelessly charge, and so can this Neuralink device in your skull. You have to put a thing on your head to charge it up at night, which I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work, but that's
Remember when they said or something that gave you brain cancer or something, and there was a scare about 10 years ago that all of a sudden all this
The
stuff
phones,
is
yeah.
going to phone, and all this.
well, we want to remind people. We want to remind people, Alan, that the Smart Driving Car Summit, virtual this year, is coming up in October, October 20th through 22nd, and you've got information on smartdrivingcar.com that people should monitor for all the latest on that.
Right, and we'd certainly like to have some feedback from some folks as to what they would like to see. Part of the issue of the summit has been to bring people together so that they can have, one-on-one conversation with folks and discuss stuff, I think is the reason why they came. And the issue is how can we create that virtually? I think sitting here like we're sitting here today, basically, in some sense, almost preaching to people. How big's YouTube? YouTube has a gazillion videos you can go watch. Problem is you can't interact with them. How do we really create, or what kind of interaction environment would people like to have to discuss some of the things that they'd like to discuss and some of the things that they'd like to get down and dirty on and try to work out? I think, the idea with this is that we're still trying to figure out what to do. And it's really what's nice about having Henry here. We're trying to do the right thing in communities to put the right thing in there. We don't know. If we knew, then, hey, yeah, here's the cookbook, follow the steps, go do it. What the hell? But we really don't know. We're trying to figure it out, and how we create an environment where it allows people to try to figure some things out and move forward is really what we try to establish with the summit. So we're open to discussion as to how we should try to pull this off.
And
One
Henry,
way.
I'm sure we want to get Henry involved with this too.
Absolutely, of course, absolutely, because people want to talk to Henry. People want to discuss things with Henry.
Yeah.
People want to pick
really great.
Henry's brain. Okay.
Yeah.
They should. And Henry wants to pick some other people's brains and get to that interaction. One needs to have a discussion here. This isn't a proclamation from above.
Right. And we really appreciate your insights to being here with us today, Henry. Always terrific to have you. Your thoughts are really welcome.
Yeah, always great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity and you guys just having an open mind to some of the things we're discussing.
And it's great having you at NYU with what you're doing at the center at NYU. And I think it's a really good thing that's going on there. And best of luck with it. Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you to our sponsor, the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF. The ticker symbol for the ETF is MOTO. And you can find more information at motoetf.com. You can find us at smartdrivingcar.com, also on Anchor FM, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple, Google, Spreaker, SoundCloud, wherever you turn for podcasts. And your smart speaker can play us too. You can find my tech reports at textination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Alain Kornhausere. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen or watch, and please stay safe.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Henry.